That was Washington's tactic. Washington knew he could not defeat the British militarily in the end, ultimately. The British had been absolutely determined militarily, and the people were behind the war. That war would have gone until the United States would have run out of resources. Robert E. Lee had the same attitude that George Washington had. Just get up to the North, really scare the North, and the North will say no. So that's what just happened, because the North succeeded in turning Lee back. There were all these bodies lying around. That Battle of Gettysburg took place on July 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 1863. This address is going to be November 19th. The bodies had been hastily buried. It was so hasty. I hope everybody's digested your dinner. But I use this trick with my undergraduates to keep their attention. But you know, the body swells, and it's very unpleasant, and there were limbs sticking up out of the dirt. It was a very grotesque thing. It was a horrible thing. There needed to be a proper cemetery for these soldiers who had died. So money was raised. Pennsylvania was going to take care of this. The president was invited to come in and give a very short address. So he understands that this is an address that's not supposed to be the keynote speech even. That was going to go to Edward Everett, Harvard University, who was the finest orator in the land. Edward Everett was going to give a 2-hour oration in which he's describing the battles, his word picture, in which, you know, he's talking about the smoke, the din, the noise, the clamor, the agony, the death struggles, the triumph. All these word pictures. That's what Edward Everett does. Lincoln knows he doesn't want to compete. Now you understand why the Gettysburg Address doesn't have but one reference, very brief reference, to the battle itself. Okay? So Abraham Lincoln's going to ask his audience to take a step back. Take a step back from the immediacy of the battle that you just heard so beautifully, rendered by Edward Everett. Well, what a step back. Abraham Lincoln is going to put this battle in world historical perspective. And to do it, he sets a tone right away, 7 years ago, which sounds as if it comes out of what book? The Bible. And of course, 7 years from 1863 refers to 1776, which was the year that what was composed? The Declaration of Independence. Now this is very interesting for Lincoln scholars who go back and study all of Lincoln's speeches. Earlier in his career in the 1840s and 1850s, when Lincoln had been in Congress, the 1840s, and in the 1850s when he comes back after Kansas-Nebraska Act and he starts to give talks, Lincoln consistently dates the founding of the country from the Constitutional Convention of 1787. Lincoln's own interpretation now of our country has changed. 7 years. He's now going to go back to the Declaration of Independence, and I'll show you why. Look at the language. So now that he's set this up, first words, everybody's thinking Bible, everybody's thinking world historical event. Then he says, our fathers. Ancient Israel was very clannish, tribes, extended families. We are the American family. We are the American family. Again, you can already see sort of an anticipation of the conciliation that he will extend in the second inaugural address. We are family. Our fathers, all of our fathers, for the North and the South. In fact, there was more Southern fathers involved, because Virginia was the largest state then. Brought forth on this continent a new nation. Now, look at the words carefully. Second line, the word conceived. Brought forth. This is the analogy of a human being's life. First of all, 7. How long is the biblical lifespan in the Old Testament? Typical? How much? Close.
I believe it was 70 years, and you're lucky it was 80.
Oh, you are good. That's exactly right. It was 10. 10 was the typical biblical span. And somewhere in the Old Testament it says that if you're really fortunate, if you're really blessed, it's 4. fourscore and 7. The analogy holds with the human lifespan. Now look at the words he chooses to describe the lifespan of this country. As a father, fathers, it is conceived. Human beings are conceived. It is brought forth. In other words, it is born. It is conceived, it is born. It is dedicated. What happens to the Jewish child on the 8th day? What if it's a girl? Every audience says this. I'm just pulling your leg. Everybody's thinking circumcision. What actually happens, of course, the dedication in the temple is that the baby is presented, the priest dedicated to God before the Israelites, and the male child, the boy child, is circumcised at that time. So already, Lincoln, who had been so irreligious earlier in his life, is using very biblical language and very biblical allusions. Conception, brought forth the birth, and now dedication, as though to a temple, as though there is a higher purpose here. And then what happens as a human being, if you've already been dedicated to God, what happens as you go through life? That's the test. When you become, say, by the age of 7, you can use your reason, and this is the traditional, from age 7 on, you're expected to be a moral agent. You're supposed to exercise your morality so that you choose right and reject wrong. But none of us quite succeeds in doing that, do we? We all struggle. We have a great test. You see the analogy. The United States is being tested. We have the opportunity, just like the individual human person, the opportunity to choose right and reject wrong. Lincoln has asked us to step back on this world historical stage. This business about slavery is serious business. We are a republic. We've been tested. How are we going to get on the other side of this test? It'll impact all mankind. That's what Lincoln is saying. Now, what significant word, not an article like the or an indefinite article like a or and, what significant word recurs in the speech more than any other? Should you look at it?
I don't know what's significant. The word here that he says 8 times.
Okay, this is almost as much as that. It's a multi-syllable word.
Oui.
It's a multi-syllable word. Did you say dedicate? Yes. Dedicate or some form of it. Now, dedication is going to be very important for 3 reasons. First of all, it's an allusion back to the old Hebrew practice, the Israel practice of dedicating a child, dedicating a young nation. It's significant on the battlefield because it's a standard trope. It's part of a battlefield ceremony to dedicate the ground, consecrate the ground where the dead who've given their lives will now be buried. But Lincoln turns this, and he now challenges us by using dedicated in yet a different way. And he says, enough now of fun historical analogies, enough now of talking about the dead. There's another sense in which we dedicate. What are you, Americans, going to dedicate this country to by your lives, by your very beliefs? How are you going to dedicate this very nation that we've staked our fortunes on? And he suggests the answer. He suggests that in the 3rd line here, it says, I'll just read it. 87 years ago, our fathers brought forth on this continent a new nation, conceived in liberty and dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. You know, there have been many revolutions in America, really. The Industrial Revolution, the American Revolution, the Commercial Revolution. This was a revolution in interpreting the Declaration of Independence. The Declaration of Independence had never been quite interpreted this way, with the emphasis now on viewing liberty in terms of equality, with the force that Lincoln will bring to it.